Johnson confirmed to ESPN that he will be returning for a 14th NFL season. The 35-year-old Johnson missed the final 7 regular season games, as well as the Eagles' playoff loss to San Francisco with that Liz Frank injury. Johnson is a 2-time All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, and his impact to this team cannot be overstated. In his career, the Eagles are nearly 60 games over 500 when he's playing. In the 46 games he's missed, Philly has an under 500 record. Big news in Philly after an offseason that has been a few different interesting pieces of guys leaving. Why do you view Lane Johnson's return as so consequential, Bart?
Just veteran leadership, right? They've had their issues last year. They weren't the same offensive line they were. The previous year, losing Mekhi Becton, their inability to kind of get Saquon Barkley to the second level. Listen, he's been there, he's done that, and this is a team that's running out of leaders. And you talk about leadership inside the locker room. That's what Lane Johnson represents. Professionalism. He gives them the ability to capture the edge of the defense. And when he left, that run game lost a pop, and I thought Jalen Hurts didn't feel as protected as he was before, and emboldened to be able to, burp the baby, so to speak, to be able to push the ball down the field. Him coming back allows, Howie Roseman to address other issues that they have on this team. It's great because you don't get tackles in free agency. You draft them, you develop them, and this gives them the opportunity to say, okay, we know that he's hinting at retirement. Maybe we draft somebody and let him learn behind a great future first-time Hall of Famer.
He would. You played offensive line at a high level for many years.
Too.
Right tackle. So let me know, this particular player on that unit, given all the transitions that they're going to be having with the coaching staff and whatever else, how important is it that Lane's coming back?
Well, I want to use a word that a phrase that Mike T uses: force multiply. He really is, and the stats bear that out. When he's not in there, it makes a huge difference because they really weren't able to capture the line of scrimmage. And we know that Jeff Stoutland, arguably the best offensive line coach in the National Football League, is moving on. So when you having that type of change, you need guys that, like Bart talked about, that veteran leadership, guys who are really good players to help stabilize not only the unit but that locker room. And so him coming back and committing for another season, I think that's big news for Philadelphia.
Mike, put yourself in Howie Roseman's shoes, GM of the Eagles, of course. How does this decision now impact the rest of the build for the team?
Yeah, this gives them a lot more flexibility. When you're building a team, Peter, ideally you have a phased-in approach at each position group. So you have one eye on today and one eye on next year. And we know they've lost Jason Kelsey, Mekhi Becton. If they lose Landon Dickerson, this is great news because now you have a couple of years to fill that spot, either draft maybe a 3rd or 4th round tackle this year, maybe a 1st rounder next year. So this is consequential flexibility that they need so they can attack some other weaknesses they have.
I think the Stoutland departure has not gotten enough press. Truly, this is one of the greatest offensive line coaches in the history of the sport. And they changed the offensive coordinator. Obviously, Patullo goes down to Miami. They bring in 32-year-old Sean Mannion. And Stoutland basically says, I'm good. I'm out. Talk to us about the replacement, Chris Cooper. You know him quite a bit.
Yeah, Peter, I think both things can be true. Jeff Stoutland was great, and Chris Cooper is going to be really good. I worked with him in Miami. People don't really know him, but he's going to be rock solid. And one thing that you can say about Nick Sirianni, I think he has managed his staff well. Obviously, they've made some changes on the offensive coordinator, but they've had, for the most part, sustained success there. And I think Chris Cooper will be very good. It's not going to happen overnight, but again, having Lane Johnson there to help with that transition is really important.
Damien, 32-year-old, first-time offensive coordinator, and maybe the most pressure-packed market there is. I think that job is one of the most interesting offensive coordinator gigs. I said it yesterday on the show. There's 21 new offensive coordinators. Sean Mannion, a former player and a quarterbacks coach from the Packers last year who's never called a play at any level, is taking over in Philly. How do you think this thing goes?
Listen, it's a very interesting decision by Howie Roseman and company to bring a first-time play caller in that young in Philadelphia. Listen, at the end of the day, I think this is a critical year for Nick Sirianni, considering everything that happened last year offensively, how they kind of fell off a cliff offensively as far as their efficiency and everything goes. If this guy doesn't get it done, not only are we talking about him we could talk about the whole coaching staff being out.
Why
I think it's absurd that we keep putting Nick Sirianni on the hot seat. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl. Like, what more do you want from me? It's like, what do you want from him? Like, I don't see how he can be on a hot seat. I think, with his offensive background, maybe he, maybe mentors him and kind of, lends his expertise because that's the side of the ball in which he dominates.
All right, let's get to some other teams here. It's a segment that we call Too Low, Too High, or Just Right. And it's based off the DraftKings win projections that were just released online. Mike T, the Chiefs are projected at 10.5 wins. Is that too low, too high, or just right?
Peter, that is too high. I think this is a reputational 10.5 wins. Look, Patrick Mahomes is going to be Superman again, but unfortunately, we know it's not going to happen overnight. They also lack explosive weapons on the outside. They need a running back, and this offensive line is much more of a work in progress than the Eagles, so I'm going lower than 10.5.
All right, Bar, let's go in our backyard here in New York. The Giants' win total is 7.5 wins. Is that too low, too high, or just right? I feel like it's the three little bears here.
Right. I think it's just right. And you talk about Harbaugh coming in and establishing a new identity for this team is going to be built off physicality. I know everybody thinks they're going to go out and maybe get a receiver, but from what I know from Harbaugh, this looks like a right tackle to try and establish a foundation to protect Jackson Dart. I think, coming in is going to get maybe 1 or 2 games, once they have a professional there. But it's going to take a couple of years to turn this roster over and get the right type of players in the building.
All right, last one. D. Wood, the Jets are projected at 5.5 wins. Too low, too high, just right?
I want to say just right. There's a lot of change in Florham Park this year. Obviously, new defensive coordinator coming over from Miami, but we know Aaron Glenn is going to call the defense. Frank Wright is the new offensive coordinator. Who's the quarterback? Like that.
Don't know.
We don't know who the quarterback is going to be. They have a lot of assets to throw at this thing, but there's a lot of unknowns here. So I think 5.5 for me sounds just right for the New York Jets.
All right, we're going to hit plenty more teams in the next couple minutes. But first, let's go back to the NBA. And they have declared war on tanking. We will tell you exactly what the league is planning to do to put a stop to the madness of teams just giving up wins. Plus, a knight in shining armor and then a golden goal for Team USA. How did they pull off the stunning comeback? We are live at the Olympics. I like that beat. A little dancing here. Time for a segment we're calling Kings of the North, the NFC North to be exact. And we're looking at the projected win totals that were just released by DraftKings. Now, we've got these question marks here, okay? The team with the highest projection for wins right now in February is the Packers at 10.5, despite the fact they did not win the division and they lost to the Bears those last 2 games. D. Wood, do you see the Packers getting above that number?
Yeah, I could see that easily. Listen, obviously we got to talk about Michael Parsons' health. When he's back healthy, they'll be one of the best defenses in the National Football League. Jordan Love, to me, is one of the most talented quarterbacks in this game. And when Jordan Love is playing at the level where he's not turning the football over, they are an elite offense. We've seen this from the Green Bay Packers. So, my opinion, I think the Green Bay Packers are going to be the team to beat in this division next year.
Mike T, maybe no one was more bullish on Jordan Love last summer than you. And it proved he had a good season. He wasn't an MVP, but he had a good season. They need to get him more weapons to get over those 10 wins?
I think they need to be more consistent. First of all, what are they going to do with Romeo Doubs? He's a free agent. Christian Watson has to stay healthy. And then last year's first-round pick, Matthew Golden's going to have to play as a first-round pick. If all that comes together, I agree with D. Wood. Very high ceiling. By the way, left tackle Rasheed Walker, also free agent.
Yeah, free agent.
I think they'll get that done, though.
Bart, the Mike of it all.
Yeah.
Do they need to get him more help now on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, we thought it was going to be a dynamic duel, a Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter type of situation with Rashawn Gary, who's a $100 million guy. He's going to have to step up because that defense fell off significantly when Michael Parsons wasn't there. I think it's predicated on being able to get to the quarterback, in this offense, getting in leads, and then, taking teams to deep water and then drowning them. So it's based on, can Rashawn Gary step his game up to kind of match Michael Parsons' intensity until he gets back healthy 100%.
I think a huge deal is Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator who was so good for them the last couple of years. He is now the head coach of the Dolphins. All right, second team. We know who won the division, but let's see what DraftKings says. Let's bring it. Lions, more than the Bears. Okay, very interesting. Mike T, do you like this number? 10.5 for the Lions.
I think that's about right. Again, if this team is healthy on both sides of the ball, guys like Brian Branch in particular, if they can play 17 games, I really like this team. Again, very high ceiling. But boy, do they need a pass rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
If they get that done and their nucleus plays most of the season, I think we're going to go over 10.5.
I think here's the question I have for the Lions. You're right about the pass rush. Their offensive line didn't play nowhere near as well as they did. Nate Taylor Decker, their left tackle, been talking about retirement. Like, they need to address their offensive line if they want to be one of those contending teams in the NFC, in my opinion.
What do you think, Lions?
I think it's about right. They just can't stay healthy. You talk about sustaining, injuries. I think, Campbell's maybe is going to have to start thinking about how he approaches practice. When you practice so hard and play so hard, the byproduct of that is sometimes guys wear down. They got to figure out how to get these guys healthy late in the season so they can make this playoff run, because that window is closing for them, because they have Laporta's going to be up before you know it. They have guys that they're going to have to address their contract situations. They have to win now.
7 teams from the NFC made the playoffs. The Lions were not one of them. Fascinating hire. Drew Petzing, who comes from the Arizona Cardinals as their offensive coordinator, is the new man calling the plays in Detroit. Something to watch. All right. Third team, we expect to be the Bears. Let's say it is the Bears at 9.5. Bart, third team in the division? Is that disrespectful, or do you think this seems just about right?
It's not. I think it's about right. It's the course correction, right? We talk about all the turnovers they were fortunate to get. We talk about the late game heroics by Caleb Williams. He has to be more consistent. You talk about completion rate at somewhere in the 50s. That's not sustainable. We always talk about greatness as doing the small things and making them look routine. He has to do the small things. He's got the knack for the dramatic. He has to start doing the 1-2, hit the slant, rhythm, timing, things like that to be able to be successful.
All right, D. Wood, I thought Caleb was absolutely phenomenal in the playoffs when it mattered most. 9.5, not even double-digit wins for a team that was a play away from playing in the NFC Championship game.
Sometimes you see these teams that they go from worst to first. They come back down to the means because they're playing a first-place schedule. All those turnovers that they got this year, that is not sustainable. So Chicago could be one of those teams. But I will say this, if they can address their defense, and I think their head coach kind of hit it on the head. He was like, we're not even going to think about momentum carrying over to 2026. No, this is a whole new year, whole new roster. I think if they have that mentality, I think good things will happen for the Chicago Bears.
Talks about the defense here. They got a lot of great production out of guys like Grady Jarrett and Kevin Byard, who are long-term veterans. Should they go big star hunting and should we consider a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett type if you're Chicago?
Absolutely, and here's why, Peter. Caleb Williams is going to year 3, so they have another year on his rookie contract. That's like a built-in $30 million buffer against your cap to the presumptive amount of what his extension will be. So go win right now. Go get somebody opposite Montez Sweat, Trey Hendrickson, Max Crosby, whoever it is, because they need to have a win-now mentality, because once that extension happens, it's going to be hard to keep this nucleus together.
Bart, you got all these eggs, and they're all – do you put them all in that one basket and go for a Myles Garrett offer of 4 first-round picks, something like that?
Yeah, not for me, because we saw this movie before with Khalil Mack with the same team with the Raiders, and it didn't work out so well. I think maybe you go with something, maybe you try and hit a double instead of trying to hit the home run. You go with a guy like Bradley Chubb, maybe Owe, bring guys in there that you can still have flexibility. I don't know about gutting, my war chest to give up all my draft equity in the future, because I need flexibility in case those guys like Bird, they start, graduating out of the program.
Okay, interesting one here. We're going to go to the 4th team in the division, because this might be the biggest variable of all the squads in the NFL. It's the Minnesota Vikings. And they actually won a bunch of games at the end of the season, but you don't leave the season with a great taste because of the Darnold situation and what the Seahawks did, and the Vikings let them walk. Bart, what are your thoughts? 8.5 wins for the Minnesota Vikings.
Listen, that was some of the worst quarterback play I've seen. I think we thought that, Kevin O'Connell can come in and just coach anybody up and just, replace the quarterback and it's just system and all that stuff. They would have did better with Daniel Jones as well. They let 2 quarterbacks walk out of the door, and they got to bring in some competition for McCarthy, because I think he's a little bit too comfortable. And Justin Jefferson, you can't be wasting his prime at all either. This is a Super Bowl roster, every position but the quarterback.
D. Wood, your thoughts?
Listen, I absolutely agree. They need to bring in competition at the quarterback position. The quarterback is in the ice tub too much. You can't help your team in that manner. Offensive line, they need to improve that area as well. But, Bart, I think you're right. Can't waste Justin Jefferson's career. This dude is, in my opinion, I think he's the best receiver in the game. You can't flounder him with subpar quarterback
Does it
play.
feel, I know it's February and we have a roster, but does it feel like it's these 3 teams and then the Vikings and there's a major gap, or do you feel like it's all 4 are kind of in the same deal?
For me, it depends. I mean, if they go get, Willis and bring him in and see if he'll take a Sam Darnold type contract, a proven contract, and with hopes of being the quarterback of the future, it gives them an opportunity to compete within the division, I think, immediately.
I think Malik Willis could be looking at like $30 to $35 million. I'm not sure that's in their plans. Who would you look at as quarterback competition for Minnesota?
Peter, for me, it's Kyler Murray. When we're talking about the next redemptive story, the Sam Darnold to Seattle, let's go with Kyler Murray and have him compete with J.J. McCarthy. His ceiling's extremely high. To me, this is a Super Bowl-ready roster on both sides of the ball.
Okay.
D would mention, Justin Jefferson, amongst others. And if I'm Kyler Murray, I am walking from Arizona and Minnesota to say, Kevin O'Connell, how much do I have to pay you?
Really? You would
Coach
Kyler makes some good money right now. Now, you would say take a discount and try to prove it just like the other guys
well,
do?
of course, like Kevin is a former Jet, so we had to get him into the
Sure.
conversation. But look, Kevin is great with quarterbacks. And if I'm Kyle Murray at his age and this inflection point of his career, go invest a year or two, get coached up, and see what happens. And with this offensive line, those weapons, to me, you're not getting paid for this year. You're investing in your future.
Bart, you made a face. Malik Willis, $30 million. Do you think that's just ridiculous?
No, not at all. I think that's kind of what the going rate is, right? And I think that still gives you the flexibility with hopes that if he performs like Sam Darnold did, then maybe you can, extend him and get him a longer deal. But McCarthy has to be – he got a general manager fired, and he's on the way to getting his coach fired because those are the guys that stood on the table and said, we don't need Sam Darnold. We don't need Daniel Jones. And, consequences will happen.
Powerful stuff. Coming up, we've got a Gotham gut punch, and it came from Cade Cunningham. This is the story. All right, Greeny's been out the last couple days. He's competing in the Olympics in the skeleton. You've seen that. Okay, that's all done. He plays. He asked for one prop ever. One prop. He wanted this fork, and they got him. The ESPN producers all pitched in, and we got him this fork. And sure enough, Jack gives this to Bart Scott, and he breaks the one prop Greeny has ever asked for. Bart, what are we doing?
I've been doubling down on creatine in the gym.
Yeah.
A lot of Nugenics going on right here.
Nugenics. Frank Thomas been really getting after it.
On behalf of the former Jet Nation, that's 10 years too late. Like, where was that?
Where was that? You can break metal, but okay.
Sorry, Greeny.
That's it. Greeny will be back. Don't worry.
I got some Gorilla Glue. We can fix it.
All the ads. He's just getting all of it. Okay, let's get in some sneaky big news where we've got some really good stuff out of Philly, which wasn't always the case the last few weeks as far as headlines go. But the Eagles get back Lane Johnson for a 14th season. He's announced that, and he has confirmed to ESPN that he's coming back. 35-year-old. Missed the final 7 regular season games as well as the playoff loss to San Francisco with the Lisfranc injury. Johnson's a 2-time All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler, and his impact cannot be overstated if you look at the wins and losses. In his career, the Eagles are nearly 60 games over 500 when he is on the field playing. And in the 46 games he has missed, Philly has an under 500 record. So Damien Woody, our offensive lineman at the table, how important and how significant is this news?
No, it's important. I mean, listen, he's one of their best players on the roster, obviously. Very accomplished guy. And we saw it with the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. They took a step back last year. They had such a hard time capturing, the line of scrimmage, and that was even with Lane Johnson, in the lineup. And you combine that with Jeff Stoutland, their superb offensive line coach now departing the organization. The more guys like Lane Johnson you have, I think it's going to be better. Just for the stability, not only their position group, but the locker room.
Let's stay with Philly because that was big news yesterday, but there was also some big headlines because A.J. Brown sat down with a couple legendary Patriots, Julian Edelman and Gronk, on their Dudes on Dudes podcast. And listen to this when they made their recruiting pitch.
Just remember, we're all Patriots. You know that, right?
Are you going to be a Patriot? Are you going to be a Patriot? Do you want to be a Patriot? I'm trolling.
Let me give some context here out of the top here. Julian Edelman played for the Patriots. A.J. Brown's favorite player growing up was actually Julian Edelman. They have a very strong relationship, and A.J. Brown was a Patriots fan because of Julian Edelman. That said, you get that wink, that's not nothing. A.J. Brown to the Patriots, put it out there. Mike T, you're our GM. What do you think?
It's kind of interesting. If I'm Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM, when I get to Indy next week, I'm saying to the Patriots, hey, I need your best offer. Mike Vrabel, you had him in Tennessee. And by the way, if he's not a Patriot, you're probably going to have to defend him twice a year. Run into Brandon B, GM of the Buffalo Bills. Hey, you guys need an outside receiver? We consider trading A.J. Brown. We need your best offer. And oh, by the way, Brandon, if we don't get something done.
Is that really how it works? You'd play it off each other? You call both GMs? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to hold an auction. And look,
oh, yeah, don't worry about that. Just keep talking over that.
Yeah, so anyway, no, my point is this. If you're running the Eagles, and like 4 great years with A.J. Brown, it's run its course. If you can get the 26th pick with Buffalo or New England's first-round pick, and you can sort of like reset this on the fly, you are absolutely playing the Buffalo Bills off against the New England Patriots.
Yeah. You have to solidify Jalen Hurts as the true leader. And sometimes, like we saw with Diggs in Minnesota, we saw him in Buffalo, that noise becomes too loud. So you have to reset. And if you're Howie Roseman, what a great opportunity to be able to get maybe 2 first-round draft picks. If Sauce went for 1 first-round draft pick, what does A.J. Brown bring, especially when he can be the finishing piece for a championship? And Howie Roseman always finds a way to come out on top. Because when you think about, drafting Devonta Smith, he's a number 1. So it may be time for him to graduate and be a true number 1, but you can go out and get a guy like Mike Evans, have 2 first-round draft picks, and be able to get a hired gun like Mike Evans, a professional that can give you productivity, and still, 1, get better with your salary cap, but 2, be able to get some picks for your war chest.
I want to go to Damian Woody on this because in the era of podcasts, with all the smoke that's around, and that is a podcast, with all the smoke that is around A.J. Brown during the season, for him to do that wink, like if you're a teammate, if you're an Eagle, if you're Jalen Hurts, are you looking at that and saying, really, dude? Or are you like, whatever, it's just off season?
No, listen, we're in a different era now where all these guys are, on each other's podcasts. It's not, these guys aren't enemies. They're all friends and all that type of stuff. So I think guys aren't sensitive. They're not going to look at him and be like, oh, he betrayed me or anything like that. We already know that there's been smoke in Philadelphia for the past couple of years. And, Mike T talked about the 2 teams that make the most sense are the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. So we know about the relationship between A.J. Brown and Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is the one who brought him into the league. So put 2 and 2 together makes a lot of sense.
And even though this year's draft is loaded with receivers, guys, I think both Buffalo and New England, maybe for a little different reasons, are win now right now. Drake made rookie deal, and obviously that whole Bills organization feels like, hey, we got to win now. We got Josh Allen in his prime.
Don't leave the Chargers or the Ravens out of that conversation.
Oh, there's going to be a long list. If he's actually up for sale, Howie Roseman will be making those calls, and there will be plenty of teams who will be interested. Coming up, do you want even more March Madness? In it to win it in the NFL, we're looking at the AFC East. The top 2 win totals are the Bills, the 10.5, and the Patriots, despite going to the Super Bowl, are beneath them at 9.5 wins. Bart, are you buying the Bills being atop the AFC over the Patriots in the AFC East?
I am. They have the best player in the division and arguably one of the best players in all of football. And I think they're going to push all their coins into the middle of the table and go all in. I know they've done it before. But they have to go out and get, Josh Allen, a number 1 proven receiver. They tried to do it by committee, going to get all these former great players, whether it was Samuel, whether it was Brandon Cooks. They guys got to go out, especially after the comments made about Coleman. They got to go out and push everything back in because now it's on Josh Allen, right? You got rid of Sean McDermott saying he was the issue. That wasn't the issue. They have to find a way to try and take advantage of his prime because the rest of the teams in the division, in the conference, are starting to catch up.
Put your Brandon Beane hat on here, a team that just keeps on getting short of where they want to go. What do you do this offseason? A huge move moving on from McDermott. What do the Bills do from a GM perspective? Yeah,
number 1, I totally agree with Bart. I mean, when the owner comes out and calls out Keon Coleman, they're going to get a receiver, like somehow, some way. Even though, again, this draft is loaded, they have to go get a veteran frontline guy. So A.J. Brown, to me, is the obvious one. There are other opportunities. And then on the other side of the ball, they need another pass rusher. Now, look, they, I think, drafted well last year, loaded up on the defensive side of the ball, but they really need help on the pass rush. Pass to score, run to win, fourth quarter pass rushers. That's what they need to close the deal in Buffalo.
We were just talking about this Patriots dream season, and they go to the Super Bowl, and already we're saying they're the second place team. Damian Woody, what do they have to do to avoid that and to stay atop the division?
Well, I mean, much like we talked about earlier with the Chicago Bears. Like you can't rely on, okay, we got there this year. Like a lot of those teams, they fall back to the mean because they were a year early. And so for the New England Patriots, they got issues. Offensive line, they need to issue. They need to address. They need to address the receiver position. We talked about that a little while ago. But here's the thing I would say about New England. Obviously, Mike Vrabel did a fantastic job. They played a ton of rookies. Okay,
13 rookies were on that Super Bowl team.
I mean, meaningful snaps. So think about the jump those guys are going to be making from year 1 to year 2.
The other big thing, though, is their pass rush. Clavon Jason's a free
Yes,
agent.
they need to
hit
address
on
that.
him. Harold Landry, maybe his best years are behind him. So offensively, they have those holes, but they got to get another pass rush.
Let's stay in the AFC. Let's go to the AFC North. The top 3 teams. We see the Ravens are at the top, despite missing the playoffs this year with 10.5 projected wins. Mike T, how do you feel about us giving the benefit of the doubt to a new coaching staff, saying the Ravens will be the top team in the AFC North?
Absolutely. I'm going higher. Lamar Jackson only played in 13 games, guys, and he was really never healthy. I think he's going to have a huge bounce-back season. Then on the other side of the ball, they do, it wasn't the same Raven defense. They need a much better pass rush. They were at the bottom in a lot of pass rush statistics. So a healthy Lamar, maybe another receiver, but fix the front 7, and they'll win more.
Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver are now running that defense, 2 guys who have history with Baltimore. D-Wood, I look at that second team there. The Bengals, 9.5 wins. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little too rich for my taste,
Okay.
to be honest with you. I know if Joe Burrow's healthy, Joe Burrow is as good as any quarterback that we have in the game. I was the defensive side. Like, until I see big-time improvement from some of these younger guys that they've drafted, make the big-time jump, I'm just hesitant to say that the Bengals are just going to be a team that's going to be double-digit type win. They need to make real improvement on the defensive side.
All right, Bart, we go to the Steelers. The Steelers have had 22 straight non-losing seasons.
Yeah.
8.5 is their number. If they get 9, it's a non-losing season. If they get 8, it is their first in 23 years. What do you make of the Steelers' number?
I think the Steelers kind of recognize that it's not any. The Steelers are never. You heard the owner. They're never going to be just tank to try and get quarterbacks for 2027. So they're going to try and remain competitive. Now, is that with Aaron Rodgers? Maybe is that with Kirk Cousins or somebody like that, or do they make the big investment in Malik Willis and hope that they can turn his career around? But I think we give Mike McCarthy I don't know what the narrative is with Mike McCarthy.
It's a negative stigma for some reason, right?
And he has the same resume. If we put the blind resumes up of Mike McCarthy against Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, it's going to be the same exact thing. But I think, I call it big man bias.
Okay.
Right? You know what I'm saying? He doesn't speak as eloquently and as cool as Mike Tomlin. He isn't as stoic as Harbaugh, but he's just as good. And I think he's going to do another tremendous job when he gets there with the Patriots, his dream job.
Steelers.
And the Steelers. And I think they're going to do a tremendous job in kind of keeping the ball rolling.
Yeah, but Bart, to me, the biggest challenge is the quarterback position. They drafted Will Howard in the 6th round. Maybe they have something there. Aaron Rodgers, guys, is going to be 43. Obviously, all-time great, first ballot.
Maybe he
Hall of Fame.
retires.
Right. So now, all of a sudden, where are you going to go? To me, this team is closer to a rebuild. I would actually consider moving on from the T.J. Watts of the world, trying to get a young quarterback,
There you go.
and then building with a first-year head coach in Mike McCarthy.
I think that, to me, it's the defensive side of the ball that worries me a lot.
Yeah.
They're old.
They're old. They spent the
Inexpensive.
most money of any team in the National Football League addressing that side of the ball, and they didn't get nowhere near the return that they were looking for.
And I think Houston just scored another touchdown in that playoff.
Yes.
Well, they're going to have opportunity. Patrick Queen, you can get out of that contract finally this year. I think he was, he didn't play very well at all. The T.J. Watt of it all, I think you have to kind of rebuild on the fly. But it's no such thing as, tanking with Pittsburgh.
No, it isn't. All right, we have a super Saturday of college basketball up ahead. 2 top 5 matchups headlined